Mosaic, a daily news program from Worldlink TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
Welcome to the News in Brief from Abu Dhabi TV. 7 Palestinians were martyred, one of whom was Yasser Taha, a leader of the Hamas movement, along with his wife and daughter. Tens of others were injured in another Israeli helicopter raid on a neighborhood in northern Gaza. Meanwhile, Mahmoud Abbas accused Israel of derailing the implementation of the roadmap. The U.S. Secretary of State calls on the international community to crack down on Hamas and other armed Palestinian factions. The Hamas movement vows to assassinate Sharon after Israel threatened to eliminate its leader and the movement's military wing. They confirmed that they will conduct operations throughout all the lands occupied since 1948. Hamas advised foreigners to immediately leave Israel to safeguard their lives. Sharon criticized the Palestinian Authority's ability to prevent operations against Israel by Palestinian factions. He talked with his government about Israeli measures after the Hamas operation, which resulted in 16 Israelis killed and hundreds of others wounded in West Jerusalem. For the second consecutive day, thousands of Iranians continue to demonstrate, protesting the government's decision to privatize some universities. They demanded that President Mohammad Khatami resign after his failure to achieve some reforms. Many Iraqi civilians were killed after clashes with coalition forces in West Iraq. U.S. forces reported one downed helicopter and confirmed the survival of its pilots. This is the end of the News in Brief. Welcome. Israel discarded the promise they made at the Aqaba summit, committing them to the roadmap, choosing force to achieve peace. Israeli airplanes raided the car of a Hamas member who was martyred along with 6 other people. This new Israeli attack may increase the cycle of violence between the Palestinians and the Israelis.
Israel fires the last bullet at the roadmap, ending all glimmers of hope for the Palestinians to revive the peace process. For the 3rd consecutive day, Israeli helicopters raided Gaza, targeting another Hamas leader. Yasser Taha was in his car, along with his wife and daughter. The 3 of them were martyred, in addition to 4 other civilians. Meanwhile, tens of people were wounded during the new Israeli massacre of Palestinians.
The first missile hit the car and it turned over. Then the second one hit, and there was one left alive. There was a man and a woman in the car. They were immediately martyred.
These new raids and assassination attempts occurred only hours after the funeral procession for a number of martyrs, including 4 members of the Al-Qassam wing, Hamas's military wing. Thousands of people marched in the procession, including a number of the movement's political figures who don't have any political immunity and are now on Israel's most wanted list.
First of all, he will not succeed with war, but he always leaned towards war. Second, their threats don't scare us. We are ready to be martyred and don't fear death. All of our people are being targeted. So if God is willing, all the Israeli people will be targeted as well.
The Hamas movement released a statement reiterating that Israel's threats are nothing new, adding that it is a reflection of the security and political tension in the Israeli government, asserting that the resistance operations will continue everywhere, while calling for renewed Palestinian unity.
These attempts reflect the tensions and nervousness of the Zionist public, but our mujahideen will stop this raging bull. The Palestinian Authority, factions and forces must unite during this crucial time under the banner of resistance, and they must hold on to the fundamentals of the Palestinian issue and the higher interests of the Palestinians.
The Israeli escalation included dividing Gaza into 3 areas, closing the Rafah border crossing, and demolishing citizens' homes. The Israeli aggression against the Palestinians is increasing, particularly against the Hamas movement. Consequently, the Palestinian factions are reevaluating their security security preparation and fully cooperating with each other, in addition to opening the files of the agents collaborating with the Israeli occupation forces to avoid further bloodshed.
Amid all this, the Palestinian Authority seems to be confused between convincing the Palestinian factions of the importance of negotiations while curbing or completely stopping their operations. In addition to disarming them, are the Palestinians hoping for an unattainable peace?
The recent wave of Israeli assassination operations against Hamas activists and the recent threats leave the Palestinians in anticipation of Israeli military operations, which they have been subjected to throughout the Intifada. The Palestinian public no longer fears the Israeli aggression. However, they are concerned, doubting if Abu Mazen's government is able to solve the current crisis.
In my opinion, if they give Abu Mazen a chance, he could do something with the Palestinian factions. But maybe they are trying to embarrass Abu Mazen. They don't want him to succeed in this mission.
This position is contradicted by the opinions of politicians and observers who say that Sharon's policies of escalating the violence is an attempt to move as far away as possible from the roadmap, which has already been wasted in the waters of the Gulf of Aqaba, despite the rumored optimism during the past trio summit.
Mahmoud Abbas is like Superman. Mahmoud Abbas holds a magic wand. Mahmoud Abbas is a Palestinian prime minister. There is a roadmap, and it must be supported by the international community, the United States in particular. Also, Israel must agree to it. If Israel agrees to stop its aggression and begin a new political path, then I believe they will find a Palestinian partner.
Israel reopened a bloody page with the Palestinians by resuming their assassination operations. Thus, a peaceful solution remains a figment of imagination. Between the action and the reaction, the two sides of the conflict have entered a new cycle of bloodshed.
This is Israel's official declared policy, to continue with the assassinations. Not only will this destroy the roadmap, but it will destroy all efforts to rescue the peace process. The Israeli government is fooling around with security and stability, and we hold them responsible for this escalation.
The diminishing chances of peace and Israel's continued escalations throw the ball in the international court, which continues to hold on to an embarrassing position and doesn't prevent the Palestinian suffering. The cycle of violence has postponed the talk of peace indefinitely, after hope of a new beginning to end decades of conflict. Majid Saeed, Abu Dhabi TV, Ramallah. Violence between the Israelis and Palestinians is not the only obstacle that impedes the difficult peace process. The issue of settlements is another obstacle. It might be the most crucial issue, not only in reviving the peace process, but also in reaching a final settlement to end the conflict. The settlers are a huge obstacle that cannot be ignored, especially when taking into consideration that the Israeli government covertly supports their activities. The settlement outposts that the Israeli government decided to dismantle, in compliance with the commitments it made in the Al-Aqaba summit, were uninhabited. Still, the decision of the Israeli government was received by huge protests among the settlers. The leaders of the settlers warned that they would escalate confrontation with the Israeli army if it dismantled the 15 settlement outposts, which were scheduled for destruction in the next few days because they were put up without a permit.
We're fighting for our homes. These are our homes, and we worked hard to build them. Today we see bulldozers destroying the mobile homes. Tomorrow the same thing will happen to the settlements.
The settlers believe that no Israeli official, even Prime Minister Ariel Sharon, has the right to dismantle the settlements.
I believe that this is our land. This is where we belong.
This is our land, and no one can change that. Not the Prime Minister or anyone else. No one can do that. They have the authority to make decisions they think are accurate.
Even though these settlements were built on lands that were robbed from its Palestinian owners, the settlers believe that the West Bank is a promised land. Thus, they think that Sharon must reverse the commitments he made in the Al-Aqaba summit. He committed to dismantle 90 settlement installations that were erected without permission since he took office in March 2001, in addition to freezing the already built settlements. There are already 150 constructed settlements throughout the West Bank and Gaza, which were occupied in 1967. 200,000 Jews live in the West Bank, and 7,000 live in Gaza. The settlements themselves are built on 2% of the total amount of land in the West Bank and Gaza Strip. However, the land controlled by the settlers or their local executive committees are about 35% of the West Bank. The Israeli government is very sympathetic to the settlers and gives them preferential treatment because they are considered important to the security of Israel. Nonetheless, there are indications that most of the Israelis are willing to give up these settlements if it helps to reach a final agreement, which seems to be far from happening at this time.
Palestinian President Yasser Arafat condemned on Thursday the latest Israeli violence in Gaza. Arafat said that he expected an escalation in violence after declarations made on Thursday morning by Israeli Defense Minister Shaul Mofaz.
You have to remember that this had been declared early morning by Mofaz himself that they have a plan to continue their military escalation against our people, and they are going on in using the Apache and F-15 and F-16, and at the same time their tanks bulldozing the houses in Rafah also, and at the same time we have many that have been killed and wounded today within the last 15 hours. And for this I am asking for the Quartet Committee, and especially President Bush, who were there in the Aqaba and Sharm el-Sheikh, to make pressure, and a strong pressure. We are in need of this strong pressure to stop this aggression against our people, against our holy sacred places. As you know, they have closed completely the entrance of Bethlehem. Who can accept this? And in the same time, Berlin Wall around Jerusalem, preventing all the Christians and Muslims to go to pray in Jerusalem, and many things decided everywhere, from Jeningrad to Rafah.
The military wing of Hamas warned foreigners on Thursday to leave Israel for their own safety, while threatening new attacks against the Jewish state. The Izzeddin al-Qassam Brigade said in a statement that the self-sacrifice bombing by one of its members in Jerusalem on Wednesday, which left 16 other people dead, was only the beginning of a new series of reprisals against the Israelis who occupy the Palestinian land. The group described the attempted assassination of top Hamas political leader Abdelaziz al-Rantisi as a cowardly operation.
Fire for everybody. I think it is worthy to consider eye for eye, nose for nose.
a flagrant challenge to the world community as well as human legitimacy, international laws, and its plan aimed at ending Palestinian-Israeli conflict. Sharon's government committed this afternoon a new crime added to its daily crimes, whereas Israeli Apache helicopters shelled a number of rockets towards a civilian car at a Jalal Street in Gaza, leading to the martyrdom of 8 citizens and more than 25 moderately and seriously injuries. The martyrs are Yasser Taha, his wife, his daughters, Afnan, 3 years old, and her infant sister. The rest of the martyrs are Sa'ed Ghabayin, Jihad Samour, Ahmed Muhammad Samour, and Muhammad Khalil Matar. Meanwhile, citizen Yasin Subhi Murtaja, 52 years old, died today due to wounds sustained during the Israeli massacre at the Shuja'iyya neighborhood.
Israelis were killed and 100 others were injured in a Palestinian Martyrdom operation that struck a bus in occupied Jerusalem on Wednesday. Palestinian resistance group Hamas claimed responsibility, saying the operation came in retaliation to mounting Israeli terrorism against Palestinians, particularly the failed assassination attempt of Hamas political leader Abdelaziz Rantisi last Tuesday.
It did not take long for Israeli Prime Minister Ariel Sharon to resume aggressive actions against Palestinians after he returned from the Aqaba summit last week, and Palestinian resistance groups were not tardy in retaliating. On Tuesday, Israeli helicopters undertook a failed attempt to assassinate Hamas official Abdelaziz Rantisi that left many Palestinians dead and injured. And in less than 24 hours, Hamas announced its responsibility for Wednesday's martyrdom operation in occupied Jerusalem that killed 16 Israelis and injured 100 others. A Palestinian teenage bomber was disguised as an ultra-Orthodox Jew when he blew himself up in an Israeli bus. The operation came as Israeli police was expecting retaliatory martyrdom operations, but said it was lacking intelligence information, adding that time and place were not predictable. Palestinian resistance factions made clear that more Israeli attacks will be retaliated.
I think everybody expects something like this after the provocation and escalation of Sharon and Mufaz against a prominent figure of Hamas like Dr. Rantisi. And third, I think if the Israeli continue killing Palestinian civilians, the Palestinians have no other choice except to continue their resistance. Fourth, and it is very important that it means and it shows that the resistance is very active and it can achieve its goals at any time, at any place.
Palestinian Chairman Yasser Arafat and Prime Minister Mahmoud Abbas condemned what they called the terrorist attack and called upon Palestinian factions to be responsible and make the interests of the Palestinian people their top priority.
I strongly condemn this terrorist attack that targeted Israeli civilians today in Jerusalem. I also condemn the Israeli operations that took place in Gaza and other operations in which Palestinian civilians were killed and wounded, as I strongly condemn the assassination attempt that targeted Dr. Abdelaziz Rantisi. I call upon all Palestinian factions to be responsible and make the interests of the Palestinian people their top priority.
Israeli Prime Minister Ariel Sharon, who sparked a new wave of aggressions and military confrontations after the Aqaba summit, said he would continue to pursue resistance members, particularly Hamas, starting from its founder Sheikh Ahmed Yassin. While the United States is fully backing Israel and financing its military, U.S. President George W. Bush urged all nations to block financial assistance to Hamas and other resistance groups after he condemned Wednesday's martyrdom operation, but he did not condemn Tuesday's Israeli aggressions.
It is clear there are people in the Middle East who hate peace. There are people who want to kill in order to make sure that the desires of Israel to live in secure and peace don't happen, who kill to make sure the desires of the Prime Minister from the Palestinian Authority and others of a peaceful state living side by side with Israel do not happen. For the people in the world who want to see peace in the Middle East, I strongly urge all of you to fight off terror, to cut off money to organizations such as Hamas, to isolate those who hate so much that they're willing to kill to stop peace from going forward.
The series of Israeli attacks against Palestinians and the Martyrdom operation in occupied Jerusalem sparked strong debate among Israelis, particularly after some Israeli officials and analysts considered that Sharon's real intentions of peace with the Palestinians are suspicious.
The Izz-ad-Din al-Qassam Brigades published a videotape of 20-year-old martyr Abdel Mu'ti Salah Shabana at-Tamimi, who carried out Wednesday's martyrdom operation. Meanwhile, Israeli occupation forces destroyed the house of Shabana's family on Thursday, leaving family members and children homeless. Aware of the Israeli occupation policy to destroy homes of the families of resistance fighters, the martyr's family anticipated the arrival of occupation forces and packed up their belongings, while children stood up by watching and crying. Israeli Internal Security Minister Tzachi Hanegbi warned Hamas leaders Thursday that not one of them was safe after the army was ordered to completely wipe out the movement. The order, which directs the military to use whatever means necessary, was issued following a meeting of Defense Minister Shaul Mofaz with the army's top command shortly after occupied Jerusalem martyrdom operation. And according to the order, everyone from the lowliest member to founder Sheikh Ahmed Yassin is a legitimate target. The latest round of killings and retaliations began on Tuesday when Israeli helicopter gunships fired missiles at the car of Hamas political leader Abdelaziz al-Rantisi in a failed bid to kill him. Following criticism at home and abroad, including from the White House over the timing of the assassination attempt, Israeli Prime Minister Ariel Sharon has remained unmoved, vowing to continue the aggressions. In Iraq, where poverty is becoming more grinding, the U.S. occupation troops are perpetrating a silent crime. After their occupation of Baghdad, they led the children in orphanages out of their quarters, and now the homeless children are in the streets, threatened by many troubles, and threatening of causing even more trouble.
Homeless children hanging around in the streets of Baghdad. This sad image has become familiar in Iraq after thousands of boys and girls were left on their own when U.S. occupation troops allowed lawlessness to spread and institutions to collapse, including orphanages. I was at the orphanage, this young boy says. We have no home, no other place to go. We eat from the garbage, his friend goes on. Good-hearted people might give us some food or money. No, they don't give us money, only food, but we mainly eat from the garbage. Girls are even subject to more abuses from gangs, having to spend their days and nights wandering in the streets, shores and parks. I have no parents, this young girl complains. I'm forced to sleep in the streets.
This phenomenon must be addressed. The cure must be social, psychological and medical. What does a child need? A place to live, and first, then food, clothing and care.
In this lawless life, the children, most of them under 18, are attaining bad behavior. Society is looking at them as aliens or as an epidemic spreading dangerously and threatening the social textile in Iraq. Even worse, looting and the U.S. occupation control over charity institutions in Iraq are maiming all attempts to save these children who lack the love and tenderness of a loving parent, and now they seek the warmth of nature. These children might have been brought up to be efficient members in society, if only the bare necessities of life were available to them, a loaf of bread and a shelter. Instead of they wasting their childhood and youth lost and probably ending up no less than criminals.
The nights in Baghdad do not differ from the days, except for the intense darkness from the continuous power shortage. When time nears 11 p.m., all the movement stops and the curfew begins. No one dares to violate the curfew but wandering animals that have nobody to take care of them. The following report was prepared by Muhammad Al-Amin and filmed by Raed Kadar. When the night begins in Baghdad, its people have more reasons to worry. Almost in every corner, a tragic story that happened at night is being told. Iraqis brag in the way they tell their stories. During the summer nights, people used to stay up all night until the morning hours, but that is no longer possible. Not because of the curfews, but because nights in Baghdad are extremely dangerous.
Walking out on the street at this time is not safe, but before the war, we used to stay until 2 and 3 a.m. We used to have safety. There is no safety. Where is the safety? It is impossible for me to walk in the streets after 11 p.m. People are getting killed for the silliest reasons.
To ease this atmosphere of horror, the American forces are rotating security vehicles. U.S. Army forces say that the objective is to return security and life to Baghdad. Incidentally, Ali Baba is a name that is heavily used at night. The Americans call anybody that violates the night curfew Ali Baba, which is another word for thief. Tonight, the first mission of Lee's patrol is to stop the young men in the entrance of what used to be called the Al Thawriya district in the era of Saddam.
These men came back from work. Maybe they were stopped because they were carrying weapons. They carry weapons for security. They do not want to die. Yes, there is a weapon inside the car.
U.S. Sergeant Lee did not find the justification of the young men persuasive. They are in trouble because they are carrying weapons. The group of the young men were led to a field where detainees are being kept. At 2 a.m., the streets of Baghdad are empty, which makes Sergeant Lee comfortable. However, he suddenly discovered a line of cars waiting at a gas station. Lee was sympathetic to the drivers, so he gave them 5 minutes to disperse. Then he continued his quiet journey in the streets of Baghdad while everybody was sleeping. The long night in Baghdad is not over yet, but the curfew was lifted so the prayers can observe their religious duty. On our program, Muhammad Al-Amin, Abu Dhabi Television, Baghdad.
Inspectors from the International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, have done all their pre-planned programs in the Islamic Republic of Iran.
Iranian Atomic Energy Organization spokesman Mr. Mousavi on Thursday refuted unfounded reports that Iran has impeded visits to some nuclear installations of Iran by the UN arms inspectors. Mr. Mousavi put emphasis that based on the Non-Proliferation Treaty, the entire nuclear sites to be inspected along with the visit schedule are always set in advance. The Iranian official then reiterated the inspectors of the International Atomic Energy Agency during their 4-day visit to Tehran have thoroughly conducted their mission and that the Iranian Atomic Energy Organization has not obstructed their visit procedures at all.
Mosaic is made possible by a grant from the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, which promotes journalism excellence worldwide and invests in the vitality of 26 U.S. communities, and the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation,